I never expected my dog to matter this much. After 70, here's why. There was a moment after 70 when I realized something that honestly caught me off guard. It wasn't about my health. It wasn't about retirement. It wasn't about my children. It was about a dog. And what that dog taught me changed the way I think about growing older. Now, I know that probably sounds strange. After all, by the time you've lived 7 or 8 decades, you've experienced the things that are supposed to matter: family, marriage, career, friendships, loss, love, the big chapters. So how could a dog possibly end up teaching me one of the most important lessons of my later years? The truth is, it didn't happen for the reason most people assume. It wasn't because I was lonely. It wasn't because I needed a hobby. And it certainly wasn't because I suddenly became one of those people who couldn't stop talking about their dog. No. What happened was something much deeper, something I didn't fully understand until one rainy morning nearly 2 years later. But to explain that moment, I need to tell you about the silence that came before him. The silence nobody warned you about. When I imagined retirement, I pictured freedom. No alarm clock, no deadlines, no rushing through traffic, no meetings, no obligations. And for a while, it was exactly what I hoped it would be. I slept a little later, drank my coffee a little slower, enjoyed the quiet. But eventually something unexpected happened. The quiet got louder. Not all at once, slowly, almost invisibly. The children were busy building lives of their own. Friends moved away, some passed away, others simply became harder to see. One by one, the routines that had structured my life disappeared. I remember one afternoon sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of coffee beside me, sunlight coming through the window, and I suddenly realized something. The phone hadn't rung all day, not once. Now that might not sound important, but for some reason it stayed with me. Not because I felt forgotten, not because people didn't care. They did. But life had changed, and I was beginning to realize that some changes arrive so gradually you don't notice them until they've already happened. The house felt larger, the afternoons felt longer, and some evenings seemed to stretch forever. So I did what many people do. I stayed busy. I organized things, started little projects, watched television, took walks. But there was a feeling I couldn't quite explain, a feeling that something was missing, not a person, not a thing, something else. And strangely enough, the answer arrived with 4 paws and a tennis ball. The dog I never planned to need. If someone had asked me back then whether I was planning to get a dog, I probably would have said no. I liked dogs, always had. But I wasn't actively looking for one. In fact, the whole thing happened almost by accident. A friend mentioned a young golden retriever that needed a home, just over a year old, friendly, healthy, full of energy, maybe too much energy. At first I dismissed the idea. A dog seemed like work, responsibilities, schedules, vet appointments, early morning walks. I had already spent most of my life taking care of responsibilities. Wasn't retirement supposed to be the reward? But for some reason I agreed to meet him, and that decision changed far more than I could have imagined. The first thing I noticed was his eyes, curious, alert, almost as if he was studying me. The second thing I noticed was the tennis ball. A worn-out tennis ball he carried everywhere, into rooms, across the yard, even to his food bowl. It was like his prized possession. I remember sitting in a chair while he walked circles around me, ball in his mouth, tail wagging, completely convinced we were already friends. And somehow, within a few minutes, I found myself smiling. A real smile. The kind that appears before you even realize it. Still, I wasn't looking for some emotional transformation. I thought I was simply giving a dog a home, that's all. Or at least, that's what I believed. Because during those first few weeks, something started happening that I barely noticed. Every morning when I opened my bedroom door, he was there, waiting. Same spot, same look, same excitement, every single day. And then one morning something happened that I still think about today. It seemed completely ordinary at the time, but looking back, I believe it was the beginning of everything. Because that was the morning I realized this dog wasn't changing my schedule. He was changing something much deeper, something I hadn't felt in years, and I didn't even recognize it yet. The feeling I didn't know I missed. For a while, I couldn't figure out what was changing. I knew something felt different. I just couldn't put it into words. Life was still the same. I lived in the same house, drank coffee from the same mug, sat in the same chair, watched the same evening news. Nothing significant had changed, or so I thought. Then one rainy morning it finally hit me, the same rainy morning I mentioned earlier. I remember standing near the front door looking outside. The weather was miserable, cold rain, strong wind. One of those mornings when staying inside seems like the smartest decision. I looked down at my dog. He looked up at me, leash already in his mouth, waiting, expecting, trusting. And suddenly I realized something. This little animal was counting on me. Not tomorrow, not next week, today, right now. He wasn't interested in my age, my past, my accomplishments, or my regrets. He simply trusted that I would show up. And in that moment, a feeling returned that I hadn't experienced in a very long time. Someone needed me. I don't mean needed in a dramatic way, not the way children need their parents, not the way a spouse might, but needed all the same. And I didn't realize how much I had missed that feeling until it came back. For years, most of my responsibilities had gradually disappeared. That's part of life. It's natural. But purpose has a strange way of hiding inside responsibility. When one disappears, sometimes the other does too. And somehow this dog quietly brought both back. The little things that changed everything. The funny thing is, the biggest changes weren't dramatic. They were small. So small that most people would probably overlook them. Every afternoon around 3 o'clock, my dog would climb onto the couch beside the front window. Always the same spot. Always the same time. And every afternoon he would sit there, watching, waiting, watching cars pass, watching neighbors walk by, watching the world, but mostly waiting for me whenever I left the house. The first time I noticed it, I laughed. The 10th time, I smiled. The 100th time, it touched something deep inside me, because there was something incredibly comforting about knowing that someone was waiting for me to come home. One day I came back from a doctor's appointment. I had only been gone an hour, but the moment I opened the front door, he came running. Tennis ball bouncing from his mouth, tail moving so hard his whole body seemed to shake, as if I'd been gone for months, as if my return was the best thing that had happened all day. And standing there, watching his excitement, I felt something that many older people secretly miss. I felt important, not because of what I had achieved, not because of what I owned, not because of who I used to be, but simply because I was me. That's a powerful thing, especially after 70, because there comes a point when many of us stop being defined by our accomplishments. The career ends, the titles disappear, the roles change, and we're left asking a quiet question. Who am I now? My dog never asked that question. To him, I was already enough. The day he refused to leave my side. About a year after he came into my life, I got sick. Nothing serious. Just one of those illnesses that leaves you exhausted for a few days. The kind where all you want to do is stay in bed. Normally, I would have spent those days alone, sleeping, watching television, waiting to feel better. But this time was different. My dog hardly left my side. He followed me from room to room, lay beside the bed, sat outside the bathroom door, and whenever I woke up, there he was, watching, quiet, patient, present. I remember looking at him one afternoon and thinking, "You really care, don't you?" Now, I know some people will say dogs don't understand illness. Maybe they're right. Maybe they don't understand it the way humans do. But I can tell you what I experienced. I experienced loyalty. I experienced comfort. And I experienced a kind of companionship that felt incredibly genuine. That week taught me something I wasn't expecting. Sometimes the greatest comfort doesn't come from words. Sometimes it comes from presence, from simply not being alone. And that realization would eventually lead me to a much bigger lesson. A lesson about aging itself. A lesson I wish someone had taught me years ago. Because once I understood it, I stopped looking at growing older the same way. The lesson had nothing to do with dogs. For a long time, I thought this story was about a dog, but somewhere along the way, I realized it wasn't. Not really. The dog was simply how the lesson arrived. The real lesson was about something much bigger, something many of us quietly struggle with as we grow older. The fear that our most meaningful days are behind us. The fear that the best chapters have already been written. The fear that life has fewer surprises left to offer. I think a lot of people carry that fear without even realizing it. I know I did. Not because I was unhappy, not because I had given up on life, but because after enough years, it's easy to believe you've already experienced all the important things. You've already fallen in love, already raised a family, already built a career, already created your memories. So what could possibly be left? That was the question I didn't even know I was asking, and somehow my dog answered it. Not with words, not with some dramatic, life-changing moment, but with hundreds of ordinary days, ordinary walks, ordinary mornings, ordinary evenings. And slowly those ordinary moments taught me something extraordinary. Life doesn't stop giving us gifts just because we get older. Sometimes the gifts simply arrive in different packages. And if we're not careful, we can miss them, because we're too busy looking backward. The day I stopped looking back. I remember sitting on my porch one evening. The sun was beginning to disappear behind the trees. The neighborhood was quiet. My dog was stretched out beside me, his favorite tennis ball resting between his paws, the same ball he'd carried around for nearly 2 years. And for no particular reason, I started thinking about the past, the years that had gone by, the people I'd loved, the opportunities I'd taken, the opportunities I'd missed, all the things that make up a lifetime. And like many older people sometimes do, I found myself wishing I could go back, just for a little while. Just long enough to relive a few moments. Then my dog nudged my hand, just a gentle nudge, nothing remarkable. But it brought me right back to the present, back to that porch, back to that evening, back to that moment. And suddenly I realized something. For years I had been treating the past as if it was where all the best parts of life lived. But here I was, nearly 80 years old, sitting beside a dog I hadn't even known a few years earlier, feeling grateful, feeling peaceful, feeling connected. And it hit me. This moment would have been impossible if life had stopped surprising me. This moment existed because I had stayed open to something new. And maybe that's one of the most important lessons of aging, not to stop looking forward, because there are still beautiful things ahead. not despite your age, because of it. What my dog gave me. After 70. People sometimes ask me what my dog has given me. It's a fair question, and honestly, there are many answers. He gave me a routine. He gave me reasons to go outside. He gave me more exercise than I probably would have gotten otherwise. He even introduced me to neighbors I might never have spoken to. But those aren't the first things that come to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is this. He reminded me that I still had love to give, and perhaps even more importantly, that I was still capable of receiving it. That's something we don't talk about enough. As we grow older, many people assume our emotional world gets smaller. But I don't believe that's true. If anything, I think it becomes more precious, because we finally understand what matters. We stop chasing things that once seemed important, and we begin appreciating things we once overlooked. A peaceful morning, a familiar face, a quiet conversation, a loyal companion waiting by the door. Those things become priceless. And maybe that's why my dog means so much to me. Not because he's extraordinary, but because he reminded me that ordinary things can still fill a life with meaning. There is one final thing I want to say. This isn't a video about why everyone should own a dog. Not at all. Some people prefer cats. Some don't want pets. Some find companionship through friends, family, faith, hobbies, or community. And that's perfectly okay. This is simply my story, my personal truth. My truth is that one unexpected dog walked into my life after 70 and gave me far more than I ever gave him. He reminded me that purpose can return, that companionship still matters, that being needed is a gift, and that growing older doesn't mean life stops giving us reasons to smile. Maybe the lesson isn't that everyone needs a dog. Maybe the lesson is that all of us need something, someone, a reason to get out of bed, a reason to look forward to tomorrow, a reason to feel connected to the world around us. For me, that reason happened to have 4 legs and a worn-out tennis ball. And I will always be grateful for that. Before I go, I'd love to ask you something. Tell me in the comments, what unexpected blessing helped you through a difficult season of life? Maybe it was a pet. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was your spouse. Maybe it was your faith. Whatever it was, I'd genuinely love to read your story. And if this story reminded you that you're not alone in this journey of growing older, please consider joining our community. There are a lot of us walking this road together. Until next time, take good care of yourself and stay open to life's unexpected gifts, because sometimes the things we never expected to matter end up meaning the most.